Greetings and salutations, and welcome back to another, hopefully thought-provoking episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast. I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today we're going to be touching on an area that I think has significant impact on business dynamics, but it is seldom discussed openly. Because the tensions between IT and security teams, I think we all kind of know they're there, but I want to talk about that elephant in the room today, and we have a luminary in the field to shed light on this crucial issue. Her name is Linh Lam, and she's the CIO at a company called Jamf, spelt Jamf. And in today's fast-paced digital environment, CIOs, CISOs, and other tech leaders, they're all challenged with aligning their visions and goals. And Lynn is here today to break down on how that can happen effectively. She will delve into the root causes of this friction between IT and security divisions and also outline 4 impactful ways to mend this important relationship once and for all. So buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you are in the world, it's time for me to beam your ears all the way to California, where Lynn is waiting to join us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Neil. Very, very happy to be here. My name is Linh Lam, and I'm the Chief Information Officer of Jamf Software. We are a global company in the Apple device management and security space. Part of my responsibilities as Chief Information Officer, I'm accountable for information technology, information security, enterprise applications, as well as global real estate at Jamf.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to finding out a little more about Jamf and some of the problems that you are helping people solve out there. And just to set the scene for our conversation today, I always try and demystify big topics that people are talking about in meeting rooms all around the world. So to start our conversation today, what would you say are the most common root causes of tension between IT and security teams in today's organizations? Because before we started recording today, you were telling me you've obviously been traveling around the world. You've done a lot of traveling. You've been talking to a lot of clients all around the world. So I'm curious if there are any trends in the kind of root causes between that tension.
Yes. So from a IT standpoint, my philosophy around the job of IT isn't necessarily just to make sure technology works. It's to make sure that the solution that IT enables really provides benefit, and we understand what the outcome of the solutions are going to entail. And that really requires a deep understanding of what our customers need. And from an IT standpoint, usually it's the employee base for whatever organization you're working for. Whether it's a sales organization, a marketing organization, an engineering organizations, what are they trying to accomplish? What are their objectives? And then finally, what is the experience we're trying to enable through technology in order for them to meet these objectives? Where security comes into play is you can build the most beautiful solution. It can work well, but if it's not secure, it's not going to work, and people likely will not use it, and adoption will be low, and it really puts an organization at risk. Security teams often come into the picture with a view of things in a very black and white way. It is or it isn't. It's secure or it's not. It meets security standards or it doesn't. And oftentimes what falls to the wayside is the lack of attention to be paid to that employee experience, or will the final solution really allow for your customers, in this case employees, achieve their outcomes? So when IT and security come together to the table, sometimes the tensions are that security comes in with a view of it has to be done this way, no other way, otherwise we'll hold everything up. And IT is there trying to enable that delightful employee experience just to make sure that things are very efficient and effective in what's being released out there. For those two organizations to truly be successful, they really have to work together and really have a common understanding of what the middle ground is. Perhaps, we go into looking at solutions in a more phased approach, but that focus on outcomes and meeting objectives and that employee experience is what's going to really bring them both together to be successful as well.
And as an ex-IT guy, I know all too well how some areas of a business will see IT as the department of no, or people that just take too long to deliver a project. So I'm curious, how does that perceived department of no amongst IT teams affect the efficiency and effectiveness of security initiatives? Anything you're seeing around that?
Yeah, so I really think that it comes back to approach in partnership, communication, and transparency. I've been part of organizations that have done things in silos, and they'll come out and say, hey, like, we built this beautiful thing. Why aren't you using it? Oh, no, we're not going to do that for you. And then I've been part of IT organizations where really, if you look at what was being delivered, it's not any more or less compared to the other IT department that I just spoke of. But the partnership, the transparency, and the communication is at a different level where trust is really built with the employee base or the customers in this case, right? Where groups are really aligned on expectations of what will be delivered. But in addition to that, what will not be delivered. I think that second part is even more important to have alignment on. Again, if we go back to being very focused on objectives and desired outcomes, and understanding for the IT teams to really have a real good comprehension of what efficiency and effectiveness really means for the employee. And finally, we do planning together and we align all of our roadmaps around what will be delivered to meet that, but equally as important, what won't be done because we're doing all these other things. The perception of it goes a long way. You go from a department of no to a department of partners, right? So that's the nuance that I see there. It's really in the approach of how we do planning, communications, and overall that transparency.
And you mentioned a word there that we hear in every organization anywhere in the world, silos, and couple that with communication problems can quickly lead to a lot of issues. And I'm curious, are there any other examples of maybe the detrimental impacts of not having that early collaboration, not having that communication between the IT and security teams? Is it something you've seen a lot?
Oh, yes. I've definitely seen a lot of that, Neil, in my past life and even in my current life. And it's a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
We're all about striving for progress here and being better today than we were yesterday. But when I think through classic examples that exist between IT and security teams, and that transparency, that communication may not be completely open. Oftentimes, and with very, very good intentions, security teams come through and they'll say, this is the objective because we may have this risk, or even worse, we have something that became an issue already. And they default to, we need a new tool, or we need to enable this piece of functionality in order to block this, to mitigate it, to prevent things, whatever it may be. That immediate reaction with really good intention often comes with a ripple effects of unintended impacts, right? So you may go in and security team saying, hey, we had this data security issue, we block one thing. What happens is there can be 3 other things that were dependent upon that data flow, whatever it is, that are impacted, and they were critical services. So had they partnered with an IT team or an enterprise applications team, however you look at it, they could understand why perhaps that functionality was there or that capability was there, and going a little bit slower in the beginning, in the planning phase, can allow for even a better solution to mitigate or resolve that issue, as opposed to just going in and saying, we need this tool or we need this thing to automatically be blocked. And one example that we have of that right now, even at Jamf today, is as we continue to look at data protection, data loss prevention, there are a multitude of tools out there in the market that comes in on the back end to really do that blocking. But we have a lot of things already within our architecture, within our applications, that really can look at things from a access security standpoint, from a data protection standpoint within the solutions themselves that we're trying to enable and are enabling, that will result in a better employee solution with lower impact to them, as opposed to just going straight to doing that block at the very end of the chain there, Neil. So that would be a classic example of what I've seen, where because we may be thinking about things in a silo, what you're trying to achieve actually can have the opposite outcome and can actually result in a lot of rework.
And I'm conscious we've probably got a lot of people listening nodding their head in agreement. So much of what we're talking about will resonate with them. And for those people, are there any actionable steps that they can take in their organisation to maybe change that existing culture of division between these departments? Because very often at the moment, we're seeing new technology implemented into a company and a lot of effort around that. But it's transforming the culture. That's where the things happen. And that's often the most difficult thing to change, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And especially for a lot of companies that have been, especially coming out of pandemic, there are a lot of companies grew so fast during that time, Neil. And it's all about, making sure that your customers are happy, that you're getting your solutions out to market, that operations can just keep up with the growth. And that results in a lot of groups doing things with good intentions in their own ways. And that can lead to silos. And now, especially companies as they reach, a tipping point in terms of revenue or size or global footprint, what got them to where they are won't get them to where they need to be. They need to think about scale. They need to think about efficiencies. They need to think about, operations in a different manner. And that's where sometimes that cultural shift of being more collaborative, even just understanding that for you to take a step forward, the group on your left and the group on your right, they actually may have to take steps before you in order for you to be able to take one step forward, right? That interdependency. And so for organizations like that, I feel that they really need to take a step back and take down the walls of, hey, this is classically just this group's responsibility, or hey, group A, why are you looking at what I'm doing over here? Mind your own business. It's not like that anymore. Like, we really need to align on where we think our organization is going to go. Where do we need to go from an information security standpoint, trying to keep the topic at hand here. And then from an enablement standpoint, what is the right thing to do for the organization, for our employees, to make sure that our data is protected, our data is secure, and then subsequently we can earn and continue to keep and earn trust over from our customers and our partners. And once you focus on the objectives, the outcomes, and do your best to try to tear down those walls of, hey, this is just my lane, stay out of it, you start to see a lot of that partnership and collaboration and moving together, as opposed to this culture of everyone trying to do their own thing. And oftentimes, what I've seen in coming into organizations that have gone through this growth, I'm coming in from a perspective of trying to help with operations and scale. A lot of these groups are doing a lot of the same things that are duplicative, Neil. And so that's the it's very common for that to happen, but that's also something that it's not efficient for an organization to have exist.
And I'm curious, Lynn, have you seen C-suite hierarchy divisions maybe spilling into the workplace, exacerbating that rift between IT and security? And if you have, what role can executive leadership play in bridging this gap? Because I suspect it is something that you've seen.
Yes, it has. And it goes back to culture as well. So if you have security rolling into one area and IT rolling into another area, oftentimes you see this perception of, hey, everything for the product, everything for the customer, security for that reigns over everything else within the enterprise, right? Or vice versa. If you have security rolling into another group that may not be as product centric, you end up having this tug of war where over on the product and externally facing side, they may feel like, hey, I'm not getting enough attention, or security doesn't understand what we're doing. We're just going to take security into our own hands. What happens at the top in leadership, whether you realize it or not, your teams, your employees, they're looking at what you are doing, and it becomes culture for them, right? It becomes either acceptable practices, or it becomes something that, they just avoid and don't do. So if you have a C-suite that is aligned, that they have very clear objectives and North Stars on what they're focusing on, and they see that collaboration across those executives, their teams will also see, hey, we need to also collaborate. But if they see walls being built up within executive teams and executive leadership, right, where one leader may just go off on their own and say, hey, we have this handle, their teams are going to follow in suit. And so it really starts at the top, that I wouldn't say necessarily the gap, but that definition of what culture and whether we are a collaborative culture, a partnering culture, or if we're going to be a culture of, hey, these are our lanes and let's stick to it. It really starts with that C-level suite.
And one of the things I try to do every day on this podcast is to try and demystify some of the big talking points in business right now. So with that in mind, can I ask you to elaborate on the CISO-as-risk-management-leader model and how that might be able to facilitate a more cohesive relationship between IT and security? Because it feels like that's an increasingly hot topic right now.
It really is. And then I'm smiling a bit over here because it was a topic as I was traveling through Europe last week to meet with our teams who are mostly engineering and security engineers that we have based out there for Jamf. And so this notion of CISO as a risk management leader, it is very powerful as long as we make sure that the CISO is focused on risk and not just necessarily security issues themselves, right? And they're able to translate what these risks are meaningfully to company objectives, employee objectives, product objectives. When you're speaking with groups of engineers or even, IT engineers, right? They are focused on, hey, I want to deliver the best thing for this purpose. And engineers may come through and say, I want to deliver this functionality for this product, for my customer for this purpose. The CISO needs to come in this case, right? If they're really looked at as this thought leader and this risk management leader, to elevate that view and say, yes, let me pull together what all of those capabilities, functions look like, or what we're trying to do for our customers, our employees, and really tell you that why security or why this risk or why we need to think about, information and data protection in this way is because if we don't, all these other things will not work, or these other things will be impacted, or actually we will not be meeting, the customer's objectives or the employee objectives. But if the CISO comes in and very focused on just information security risk, it's saying, hey, we just need to focus on data because that's the right thing to do, or we need to focus on access security because this is the thing to do. They miss that opportunity to really elevate the conversation and, in many cases, educate our organizations from IT to engineering to really think about why we need to do all these things, because it's actually part of what you are trying to build and what you're trying to solution for. It can't be an afterthought. It's actually baked in there as part of what you are designing and looking to put out there. So we need to make sure that the CISO can elevate their thinking of what the definition of risk means to them as well.
And in your experience, I'm curious, what are some of the maybe best practices for balancing that IT teams focus on speed and the security teams focus on safety? Anything you're seeing around here? Because it is quite a tricky balance, isn't it?
It is a very tricky balance, and it is something that we at Jamf work on day in and day out too, because we are also in the security space, right? Whether it's endpoint security to network security, we are also practicing what we preach and drinking our own champagne over here too. And we have a security team that is laser focused on making sure that Jamf is protected, our customers' data is protected, our partners' data is protected. But our IT team, I'm very proud of them because they are extremely focused on making sure that we have that amazing employee experience, especially since we are in a full hybrid model here, Neil. Like our office is a service, not an expectation. So we don't have large amounts of employees going into offices every day. So, we're at close to 3,000 employees. You could think of us as having almost 3,000 offices on a daily basis that we're protecting and enabling. So it goes back to that partnership between IT and security and really focusing on, what is the outcome that we're trying to drive. I ask our security team to think through what are their risks, what's the risk posture, and then what's the roadmap that we want to align in order to mitigate these risks and resolve for them. But then subsequently, IT comes into that picture to look at things from a solutioning and engineering standpoint to say, hey, here is our roadmap of what we're trying to deliver. Okay, we understand that perhaps we can't deliver this experience if this security, risk is not mitigated. How about we collaborate in this manner to talk about the outcome and we deliver these things at the same time, right? Security, you're saying that I need to deliver this tomorrow, but here's these other things that we, IT, are planning in the first or second quarter, whatever it may be, that is going to work through resolving maybe 50% of that. Is that acceptable or not? Or do we need to work on realigning our roadmap and plans over the next 2 quarters in order to deliver to meet these security requests? But key to that is making sure the security team comes in with a clear view on, hey, we are asking for these standards or these requirements to be met because it's tied to these risks and these outcomes will be impacted. Oftentimes I've seen security teams come in and just say, hey, we want this because we want it and we want it yesterday. And that's where, a lot of conflict and points of contention can come up too. But I really, really push for security to come in with their ask tied to risks, tied to impacts, and IT to come in ready with their roadmaps and what they're trying to achieve. And that collaboration needs to come together to make sure that both IT and security are aligned on the path forward on what they're doing together, but then also if they're not doing something, why, or if it's going to be deferred for another time, making sure that they're both aligned on that.
And are you noticing the acceleration of digital business? Are you seeing that impacting the urgency for IT and security teams to work more collaboratively? Are they being pushed together? Is it working? What are you seeing here?
Absolutely. Especially coming out of pandemic the last 3 years and just how much more has gone digital so much more quickly. We think of functionalities or even industries going digital that were at a much slower pace going into the pandemic, and now if it's not digital, it's not a normal thing anymore. And so even here at Jamf, we really had to rethink a lot of the ways that we do go to market, as well as enabling our partners, and then subsequently, how do we make sure that our employees that went full remote and hybrid, they are also still operating efficiently and effectively as well. But all of that cannot be achieved unless our security is of the highest standards and meeting the requirements of the various compliance frameworks that we've achieved, or things that our customers and partners really expect of us day in and day out. And so we need to make sure that IT engineering teams and security teams are as aligned as possible, because we look one way to IT and engineering to say, hey, do the solutions work? But it just takes one weak link in the security chain for the security team to have to be, accountable and really speak for everything that's being solutioned, right? And why there may have been some sort of issue or failure in what was delivered. So that the urgency is there, because from a go-to-market standpoint, if it's not, then we will be behind. But then that collaboration is so important, because what you put out there from a solution standpoint, if it is not secure, it won't work. But if it also is not meeting the mark in terms of functionality or expectations, it also won't work. So that tug of war really needs to turn into, everyone's kind of in that boat and rowing in the same direction. It's not a tug of war.
I cannot thank you enough for coming on today and sharing your insights from what you've learned with conversations with leaders all around the world. And you have had a hugely successful career. And I always like to find out a little bit more about my guests and how they got here too. So with that in mind, and the fact that none of us are able to achieve any degree of success without a little help along the way, if I was to take you way, way back in time for a moment, is there a particular person that you're grateful towards who maybe helped you get you where you are? Maybe they saw something in you, invested a bit of time in you, anything at all. I'd just love to hear about that and give them a little shout out to them.
Absolutely, Neil. I think back to, quite a few people, but there was one in particular, and he actually was a CIO a couple lives ago, and I worked within his organization, and I was a lot younger than I am now. And I was just embarking upon having a family and kids. So I have two little children now, but it was during a time where women in tech were a little bit more sparse and few and far between. And, having children often would be looked upon as, a pause in your career or a step back, right? And I remember on my first maternity leave, I actually was given a promotion during that time. And I came back with, a renewed sense of energy and purpose for my role, and feeling like, wow, like this place really values me for who I am, and not necessarily, what's going on from a personal standpoint. But this person also made sure, and he was a great ally in, looking at pay disparities between genders within his organization as much as he could. And he really advocated for opportunities for females within his organization too. And I have a lot to thank him for, because he was actually the one that really believed in me. And when an opportunity came up for an organization to look at a head of IT CIO role, he said, Lynn, like you have to look at this person. I know that she may be younger, or she may, have little children, whatever it may be, but she is the most capable. And sometimes you just need someone to really believe in you and advocate for you, but then also stand up for you in many regards, right? Especially when the environment may not be one that's conducive for someone like you. So I have a lot to be grateful for towards this person. And to this day, he and I catch dinner, a couple times a year, and we talk about a lot of things. And I always thank him for that. And part of why I love doing these types of podcasts and talks and working on mentorship with others too, is I know that I was very lucky to have that type of ally. And I hope that I can be the same for someone or people as well moving forward.
What a wonderful story. And I suspect if he does get to listen to this podcast, he might have a little tear in his eye right now. And it's so important to share these stories, though, because I think we all impact each other in so many different ways, but we seldom understand just how much our actions can impact someone. So thank you so much for taking the time to share that. And before I let you go, for anyone listening wanting to find out more about Jamf, there's a lot of great work that you're doing there, and you'll be able to help people around a lot of the subjects we talked about today. If they want to find out more about that or contact your team, would you like to direct the best place for everything?
Sure, absolutely. You can go out to our website at jamf.com, jamf.com. You can find us on LinkedIn as well. We also have a nonprofit arm of Jamf called the Jamf Nation Global Foundation that will be of interest to many. So what we do is we set up Matter Innovation Hubs to really provide the technology within different parts of the world, really focused on underprivileged areas or areas where the economics of things may not be as conducive to having tech education. So take a look at Jamf Nation Global Foundation, the work we're doing with the Matter Innovation Hubs as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I loved speaking with you and hearing you explain the main causes of this tension between IT and security teams, why these divisions have got to end, and also the 4 ways to improve that relationship, which includes changing the culture of division, early collaboration and communication, overcoming C-suite hierarchy divisions, and that need to embrace the CISO-as-risk-management-leader model too. Pure gold there. So much to think about at the end of the show, but more than anything, just thank you for bringing it all to life today. Thanks again, Lynn.
Thank you, Neil, for having me. Appreciate the time.
So a big thank you to Linh Lam for sharing her invaluable insights on one of the more contentious issues inside the tech realm. Navigating those turbulent waters between IT and security teams. And I think it's clear that executive leaders play a pivotal role in fostering a culture of collaboration. And we've learned that the onus is on CIOs, CISOs to set this tone. And Lynn's advice on changing cultural norms, promoting early-stage collaboration and embracing the CISO-at-risk-management-leader model will go a long way in fostering a united front in any organisation. And for everyone listening, is this a challenge that you've heard about? Have you felt it? Have you felt that tension in the room? How are you working to overcome it? Has today's episode been useful? Do you think we missed anything? Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @NeilCHughes. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's share these experiences and maybe all move forward together. Because when it comes to IT and security, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And as we increasingly rely on digital transformation, it makes sense to strive on a more harmonious relationship between these two critical divisions. That's what we need. But as I said, let me know your thoughts. So I'm going to go now, make myself a nice cup of coffee, kick back in my favourite chair, maybe play a bit of FC24. But have no fear, I'll be back bright and early tomorrow with another guest. So thank you so much for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.